For those of you who don't know me, Harriet just stole my entire introduction. Yes, I am the daughter of Presbyter Mary and Father Baglaneus, who most of you remember as Father Ted. He was the priest in the Rye Church from 1974 until he retired in 1996. I'm married to my wonderful husband, Michael Xanos. For those of you who don't speak Greek in the room, that means that he's not Greek. He is the youngest of 8 in his large Irish Catholic family. We have a daughter, Alexandra, who is 28 years old and lives in Los Angeles, California. You gonna stay next to me? Yeah. We also have a son, Mike, who is 26 years old. He lives in Dallas, Texas, and Mike is the reason why I'm here speaking to you today. Our son, Mike, is an addict. Our son, Mike, is an addict in recovery for almost 5 years now. Now, for those of you who knew my father, you know that he was a man of great faith, just as Father Elias. And I've often wondered how he would have handled the spiritual roller coaster that my family had to endure for all those years. You see, it wouldn't have mattered that my father was a priest, because drug addiction doesn't care if you're religious. Drug addiction doesn't care if you are a straight-A student or rich or poor. It doesn't care, period. Drug addiction causes statistics to rise and knees to fall. And without treatment, praying is the only thing that we can do. Our story is not about my son. Our story is not about me. It's about something much bigger than any of us in this room. It's about holding on to hope and faith while struggling. Now, my son Mike was a shining star since he was a little boy, and he always had the whole package. He was incredibly handsome. He was a straight-A student. He was very popular, especially with the girls. And he was an incredible athlete. And we all knew this about my son. What we didn't know was how he felt on the inside of that beautifully wrapped package. We didn't know that he felt like he didn't fit in. We didn't know that beneath it all, he felt very alone. Now, recently, the NCAA and Sports Illustrated wrote a story about addiction in sports, which featured my son. And the story begins like this. Mike and lacrosse met in the 5th grade, and the love affair started quickly. By day, his lacrosse stick accompanied him everywhere he went, and by night, it joined him in bed. Mike was only a boy when his wound opened. He was 14 years old, and in 2003, he tore the labrum in his shoulder. Right then and there, my son knew that something wasn't right. He knew something inside of him was broken. Now, not every young athlete who feels a knee erupt or a shoulder tear apart will end up like my son. Not all who have surgery and are given that little orange bottle will crave more once their prescription runs dry. And not all of them will turn to the streets to find more pills and ultimately heroin, because the hunt for pills has become too expensive. Many young athletes like Mike are at risk because they can't cope with the loss of their athletic identity that accompanies a significant injury. There are a large percentage of young boys and girls who carry a predisposition for addiction which lies dormant until those pills rouse a monster that will tear the user, his friends, his family, anyone in its path to pieces. Addiction is a family disease because it is an octopus. And no matter what you think or what you believe, addiction does not discriminate. No one is immune. My son was privileged. Statistics show the largest demographic is that of the privately insured, wealthy 18 to 25-year-olds. Well, we were wealthy back then, and we had everything materialistically that anyone could ever want. Many things happened to our family all at the same time, and we lost all of those things. But we knew then, and we know now, that none of that mattered as long as we didn't lose our son. Now, in that fall of 2003, after Mike had his first surgery, he arrived at school, first day of high school. He stood at his shiny new locker with his arm in a sling, and an older student approached him. He approached him like a moth, like a moth drawn to the fire of his sling. Now, my son was very confused when this older boy asked him if he had any pain medicine for that damaged arm, and if he did, could he sell him some? Well, Mike thought, why? Why does this guy want my medicine? Sadly, it was a question that he would have the answer to soon enough. Because after the next surgery, when Mike ripped the labrum on his other shoulder and then had back-to-back surgery on his ankle, he had to stop playing his sport. He kept his depression hidden very well, and when he couldn't play, this is when a new love entered into his life, replacing his love of lacrosse: pain pills. The older kids told him, take a few at a time. It'll help you feel better, Mike. So he did. And his fears and his pain and his depression disappeared. So he thought. He says that it made him feel normal. See, he was not like the other kids that were partying and drinking on the weekends, because when my son started, he could not stop. This is the difference between substance abuse and addiction. But I wasn't educated at all about any of that, and why would I have been? I had no idea that my son was taking drugs. His moods changed and his friends changed, and I always looked past my son, and I blamed everything on his friends. I never really looked at my son, because to me, he was perfect. Addiction is no different from any other disease, because if you watch the person that you love disappear right in front of your eyes long enough, you will start to dissolve as well. Now, I'm his mother. How did I not know? As a mother, I thought I knew everything. And my world as I knew it was slipping out of control, and I started to think that someone had given my family the mati. Now, Father Elias, I know very well that if we believe in God and have faith in God, we don't believe in the mati. But you have to understand that rational decision-making for a parent in the midst of this is impossible. I was looking for anyone or anything to blame because nothing made sense to me. In 2009, Mike left for college in Vermont. Our daughter moved out to Los Angeles. Michael and I moved back to New York City. And I was filled with so much uncertainty. My son started calling home asking for money all the time because he wanted to go skiing and he wanted to go camping. And I thought that all of this outdoor activity would help him with his depression. So I would keep sending him money because I thought I was helping him. It wasn't until he ended up in treatment that I found out that I, his mother, was basically funding his addiction. So this mother who thought she knew everything knew absolutely nothing. In my mind, I was his caretaker. But the cold, hard truth is I was my son's enabler. Like most of you here today, I grew up to be a typical Greek mom. I loved my family more than anything else in life. I especially loved carrying on the traditions of my religion, cooking my grandmother's recipes for the holidays and filling my home with friends and family. I always thought that the aroma of oregano and cinnamon floating through the air, wrapping its warmth around us, would keep us safe from the big bad world. I always thought that it would protect us. So when this addiction crept into my home, I withdrew from life. I stopped doing charity work. I stopped returning phone calls. I stopped going to church. I basically just stopped living. And my faith was quickly slipping through my fingers. I let go of everything that made me strong until I had nothing to hold on to but fear, because I feared what would happen if I focused on anything but my son. I ignored my wonderful husband, and I neglected my beautiful daughter. And I stopped taking care of myself, which caused me to have a heart attack when I turned 50. Halfway through college is when Mike finally admitted to us that he was addicted to the pain pills from all of the surgeries. He wanted help, so we pulled him out of school. We brought him to New York City. We had him work every day with a personal trainer, a hypnotherapist, an acupuncturist, and he did an incredible outpatient program at a very reputable New York City hospital. And when it was all over, he went back to school. He went back to school because I kept pressuring him about finishing school. and it never should have happened because he wasn't ready to go back. That following Christmas was our last time together as a family on Cape Cod in our family home. It proved to be the worst time in our lives when we all arrived and we saw my son, because we knew he was so thin and pale and sick, and yet I still couldn't look at him that way. Our home was filled with family and friends, and I just made believe that everything was fine. I knew enough by this time to understand that until he was ready to want the help and really wanted, that nothing would matter, no matter what we did or said. And that day, my girlfriend pulled me aside and she said, "Anita, have you looked at your son? Have you really, honestly looked at your son?" Well, I was so ashamed. I wasn't ashamed of him. I was so ashamed of myself. I had been running around so busy, making believe that everything was so perfect with my perfect family, wearing our perfect clothes and our perfect home, because I was in such deep denial. My son kept telling me he was fine and he was thin because he had taken up running at school. Every excuse in the book that you could possibly make up. So the day after Christmas, he went back to school. Alexandra went back out to LA. Mike and I came back to New York, and I waited. I waited and I prayed that no one would die before he was ready to want to go to treatment. And within a matter of weeks, we got the call from his roommates. My son was missing. When I received the phone call, instead of worrying and reaching out with love, I became enraged. I left him messages yelling at him to call me and to stop making us all worry. No response. My Greek blood boiled. I was so angry, I thought I was going to explode, and I never stopped to think that he actually needed me until a friend of mine at my house stopped me, and she told me, "Anita, you have to tell your son that you love him." And I needed her guidance, and I accepted her guidance, and I sent my son what was probably the most important text that I've ever sent in my life. I wrote him these words: "Son, I love you, and I need to know that you're okay." I received back the most frightening words that a mother could read from her child. His text read, "Mom, no one can help me." Now, what I didn't know until later on was that right at that moment, my beautiful boy was laying in a bathtub in a filthy Vermont hotel, waiting to die. He had taken enough pills to end his life because he just did not believe that he could beat this demon of addiction. I firmly believe that it's by God's grace that within a few minutes he called me in what he calls a moment of clarity. He couldn't believe that his family still loved him and was still there for him after all he had put us through. And I told him, "We're here and we love you, but you have to go to treatment only if you are ready and you want to go. You cannot go because we want you to. You cannot go because we're telling you you need to go. You have to want to go." And my son told me, "Mom, I surrender. I don't want to die." So the next thing I knew, we were on our way to treatment. We were on our way to the Care and Treatment Centers in Wernersville, Pennsylvania, to a very specific young adult program. My mind started racing in all different directions on this ride, and I kept waiting for the GPS to tell us, "Turn around and go back to your regular lives." And that never happened. I knew I had to put my faith in my son and the experts. But I still wondered, how is this going to happen while he's in treatment? How is he going to beat this illness? How can these strangers help him? They don't know him, because I believe that if I, his mother, couldn't fix him, that no one could. I always knew I hadn't caused it to happen, and I always knew that I couldn't control it, but I do admit, I certainly thought that I could cure it. Maybe by wrapping him up in his baby blanket and rubbing his head and feeding him a bowl of warm homemade soup. Within 2 weeks of dropping my son off at treatment, my husband, my daughter, and I all went for the family therapy program. And for the first time in years, we saw my true son. 2 weeks. This was the most important part of our recovery as a family. Everyone needs to be in recovery when this happens to someone in the family. And I understood that the motto at Caron, I finally understood what it meant, that the patient is family and the family is the patient. You see, this is not about finding temporary recovery. This is about recovery for life. And we are a team because we are a family. And we're all taught through the Bible that a house divided will not stand. And I knew after going to this program with my family exactly what that meant. You see, I'm not an addict, but try and love one. And then you see if you can look me square in the eyes and tell me that you didn't get addicted to trying to fix them. And if you're lucky, they recover. And if you're really lucky, you recover too. So while Mike was in treatment, I realized no more time for secrets, no time for whispers and judgment. I had feared judgment by others, and I'd kept a secret for way too long. Why did I do that? Because it's difficult with people that don't understand about addiction. Those not directly affected won't be able to understand why you are so focused on your loved one's well-being. Don't become angry with these people. They don't understand. You know what? They're lucky to not understand, and you'll find yourself wishing that you didn't understand either. So once I finally understood this disease, I never felt shame for my son. I felt so much shame for myself. I was so ashamed at how much I worried about what other people thought of my family instead of reaching out for help to help my only son. Now, what kind of a mother was I? Well, the past few years have changed me because I never realized how much strength it takes to ask for help, because I never had to ask before. And what ended up happening to my son in treatment was that he found a much, much stronger version of faith than I had ever felt myself. I had been struggling so hard to hold on to my own faith that in the end, I realized that my faith was never lost. It was me who was lost. Now, that was almost 5 years ago. And this past spring, Mike was honored by the Caron Foundation and gave his testimonial in New York City. Instead of telling you how and where my son is right now in his life, I'm just going to show you a little piece of his testimonial. Let him tell you himself. I hope you don't mind.
Hey, I'm Mike. I am an addict. Hello. Man, I used to be insecure, and apparently I still am. I used to drink and do drugs to help with that, like a lot of people. But there was something different when I used. When I picked up, I could not stop. And when I did stop, I could not stay stopped. That was pretty much a nightmare for my family. And within 3 days of going back to school, I was in a Motel 6 with a bag full of dope in an empty bathtub, ready to die. And I turned on my phone and a text from my mother, "I love you, just let me know you're okay." And I had this moment of clarity. I wanted help. And even though I was this ready, I mean, my addiction was so strong, I used every day, even including the day I checked in. And they knew that I needed more, so they sent me to an aftercare program at the Gaston House in Dallas, Texas. What was cool is through all the pain, the fear, and the treatment and everything, there's now this spiritual foundation and connection. I believe it's God keeping me from needing and picking up that first drink or drug, and he's doing for me what I've never been able to do for myself. And now I'm over 4 years sober. I coach lacrosse. I still work at Gaston House, and I'm a recreation coordinator, call me Captain Fun, and a recovery advocate. I'm working on my LCDC, which is a license in chemical dependency counseling, and I'm in the final year, finally, of a bachelor's in business management. I wrote a book with my family called S.O.B.E.R, Son of a Bitch, Everything's Real. It's on Amazon. And I, like 2 weeks ago, just got engaged to an amazing young woman. I'm still insecure today. I'm still sensitive, but they're not really reasons for me to get high anymore. I'm only human, and I find when I even share this with other people, I find that I'm not alone. So I just want to thank God. I want to thank my family, and I want to thank Karen for starting me on the path that I'm on today and that I intend to stay on for the rest of my life. Thank you, guys.
So last January, Mike and I self-published the book. We wrote it side by side, showing two very different sides of a struggle. And many people ask us still, why would you expose yourselves to the details of this horrific journey? The answer is very simple, because you have to show that recovery is real for people who are alone, desperate, and afraid to reach out for help. You have to help people understand you're not alone. No one is alone. And when you love someone who is struggling, it's not about saving them. It's about being there for them as they save themselves. Now, Mike no longer sleeps with his lacrosse stick. He sleeps with his Bible. And I know that his grandfather has been right by his side every step of the way. And my son tells me all the time, Mom, it's so true. Although everything seemed perfect about me on the outside, I really did. I always felt alone on the inside, but I know now that as long as I have God in my life and in my heart, I will never be alone. All I have to do is remember that for the rest of my life. So I'd like to thank you, Father Elias. I'd like to thank the ladies of the Philoptohus, all the new friends that I've made, and all the old familiar faces that I see. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And if you walk away with anything today, please walk away with this. It's okay to ask for help. Not only is it okay, it is essential. Addiction is very real, but more importantly, so is recovery. Thank you.